The events begin to take place in Lu's villa, specifically in the living room. The main character named Lu Lei started to call out to his Auntie Wu in bewilderment. The guy was extremely outraged that his bank card was frozen. Lu Lei's stepmother, Wan Qing, was willing to discuss anything with him after dinner. Lu Lei was incredibly angry, and he wasn't interested in the damn dinner, because the bank employee told him that his card had been blocked by his aunt. Lu Mei's younger sister Lu Mei, on Wu Qing's side, coquettishly turned to her brother, and told him to eat first before fighting. Lu Shiyu's younger brother on Wu Qing's side was also in solidarity with his sister, and said that it was pointless to rush right now. Lu Lei was amazed by his relative's indifference to his problem, and did not understand why did his younger brother think that it was pointless to rush. Auntie sipped her wine and turned to Shii, for they really couldn't put anything off, and she wondered what to do next. Turning to little Lei, she wondered if he realized that whether his father was alive or dead didn't matter anymore, as long as it was making a loss for the company. That's why she asked his father's lawyer to rewrite all of his Lei stock into Lei's name. The guy felt abandoned, because his father had disappeared only 3 years ago, and she was already intent on rewriting all his assets in her name, but the aunt was not intent, she had already done it. The aunt was undeterred and suggested Lei make their farewell meal memorable and clarified if the guy had any requests. Lei asked for green tea and in turn took her as kin, but she took advantage of his father's absence. Lu Shiyu stood up for his mother, and told the guy to watch his tongue or he'd have to make it so he could never speak again. The woman asked him not to demonize her as if she felt nothing for him. The guy shouldn't have worried because his aunt thought for him. Suddenly, his aunt holds out a card to him that has 5 million on it. Most importantly, Lei needed to sign a contract and he would be secured for life. Excited, the boy immediately realized that his aunt had thought of everything in advance. They wouldn't have survived as a species if they only thought of themselves, the woman said. The whole family started to hurry him up or he wouldn't get his 5 million and asked him to accept his generous offer, because it would be better for everyone. The hero had already started reaching for a pen, and said he would sign the contract, however. Wan Qing realized that it wouldn't end so easily, and asked the guy what his conditions would be. With a slight smirk, the guy pointed out that he didn't need 5 million. After all, he needs the ancestral land of the Lu family. The family was dumbfounded, they certainly didn't expect the fact that he would ask for all the land. Perceiving how naive it was, all the family members mockingly looked at him and laughed. Because all there is a small supermarket, worth no more than 3 million, the relatives were really surprised, and wondered if the guy's head was all right. Meanwhile, the wise woman realized that she was even more suited to these terms, and she ordered Shii to print out a new contract. When the contract was ready, the guy needed to sign it again. Given that all the terms were suitable, he accepted his family's offer and signed the contract. At the same time, the wine was being poured into glasses. After a successful transaction, Auntie suggested that everyone drink to a wonderful tomorrow. Lu Lei clearly was dissatisfied with something, for with an unsatisfied expression, he looked straight into his aunt's eyes. With incredible anger, he splashed the glass of newly poured wine right into the insolent woman's face. Just looking at her made the hero want to puke. The woman was not at all surprised by such an act, and continued to smile and look at Lei as if nothing had happened. Licking her fingers from the spilled wine, she said it was coming from someone who had lost everything. Incredible anger overcame the guy, and he yelled one last time that she may have won the battle, but she should remember his words, the war she would lose. With a loud slamming of the doors, Lu Lei walked away from his hated aunt. The younger brother was surprised and outraged, for his mom had let Lei go even after what he had done. His aunt was clearly fine with him getting revenge if that's what he wanted. She wasn't worried about it at all, because news of his father's disappearance was spreading faster and faster, and soon no one would be taking his side. Meanwhile, Lu Lei was approaching Lu's ancestral land. His grandfather once said that this plot of land should not be sold. This land has been passed down from generation to generation because of the Lu family. In fact, the guy started to open the doors of the store. An incredibly bright light was coming out of it. It was literally blinding. Astonishment overtook the lad, for he did not understand how the light in the store could be so bright. Unexpectedly, when Lei entered the supermarket, scanning began to be conducted, and the host was recognized, and then data collection was conducted. According to the data collected, the name was listed as Lu Jing Lei, height was 6 feet, age 22 years old, authorization was successfully passed. The Lord was successfully recognized and the transfer to the other world began. Lei found himself in an unknown place with many jars of substances. An incredible shock overtook him, for he did not understand at all what had happened to his house. The place was incredibly bright, and it contained things that had never been here before. In shock, the guy found the nearest door and started banging on it, asking if there was someone behind it, then asked to open it for him. Suddenly, the door was opened by an unknown guy with a bird standing behind him, who was immediately surprised by the appearance of a new visitor, and exclaimed that at last someone he could rely on had come. Lu Lei, closing his nose in disgust, started to shout why the stranger stank so badly. The same stranger pressed against his leg and grabbed it. Then he started to shout that he was obliged to help him. After all, he would kill himself if Lei didn't help him. The overweight guy was extremely happy that Lei was perceptive, because this had been bothering him for years. At the same time, Lei said that perhaps if he let him go, he would be able to help him in some way. He was struck by Lei's kindness, and he immediately thanked him, for now he was assured of happiness for the rest of his life. The voice in his head told him to accept the stranger's request, and proceeded to perform the tasks with caution. Meanwhile, the hero thought about what to do with the stranger, and whether he should take him to the dentist. It was impossible to start the next stage without completing the task at hand. There should be a reward for completing a task. The voice in my head wouldn't stop and kept repeating it over and over. The messages in my head were like someone was spamming. Lu Lei, he came up with an easy solution to the problem, namely mint chewing gum, which effectively removes bad breath, and makes your mouth feel fresh. Weird Kid ate every last piece of chewing gum without even taking the wrapper off. He was incredibly happy, because now his mouth didn't stink like a cesspool. The stranger asked about the cost of this divine artifact, taking Lei's hand. Heroes realized that he could come up with something else. After that, he showed the kid 3 fingers, and he thought that his medicine might be of high quality, but 3 low-grade spirit stones were too much, and then he asked if he could pay with something else. The unidentified man offered something different, in lieu of payment, which is what all men want. Some kind of magical elixir that glowed incredibly beautifully. With this elixir, you can party with the beauties for hours and not even get tired. Lei Bud boiled with shame, and asked the stranger why he even wanted to do this. As suddenly, a strange feeling swept over the lad that he had never experienced before. The voice in his head began to say that the host's time in the cultivation world had expired, the people would be purified, the world would be rebooted, the first solitary life was complete. As a reward, the host would receive the Eye of Rebellion. The boy found himself back in the very store where he had originally arrived. The Lord successfully completed the task in the store. The voice in his head sincerely hoped that the Lord would work hard to gain power as soon as possible. When the store's profits reached over 1 million, the store would be renovated, and the spirit in field would also be available for construction. Lei understood, and asked him not to bother him anymore. 3 days later, an unknown car drove up to Lu Lei's store. A certain woman began to emerge from it. And she was insanely attractive. This girl was Lu Lei's childhood sweetheart, Meng Fuyao. As soon as she started approaching the store, the hero immediately felt incredibly awkward and extremely surprised. In his hands he was holding the very potion he had received as a reward for helping her. The boy did not understand what the girl was doing here, but she told him that she had heard that he was now living in his native land and that his supermarket had recently opened, after which she asked how he was doing. Overcoming the awkwardness, the guy replied that it was fine, he was working from scratch to get rich. Also he had heard that Fuyao was angry upon hearing that he had now left Wuqing, but now Na was behaving with restraint and supporting him. The not indifferent girl suggested Lei based on his situation to join her. Lei got incredibly close to the girl, and directly asked about what she was planning. Did she really want to do it again with him even though they broke up? The girl's reaction was immediate, she was infuriated by the guy's words. With all her might, she kicked the insolent young man. The shameless man immediately screamed furiously in pain. In upset feelings, the girl started to leave, and afterwards said that he was heartless and remained so. The guy obviously needed to rest for a few days first, she was going to get him a proper job later. He clearly didn't understand how Lu Lei could bring so much trouble to Miss Meng. The girl got into her car, and with a little anger began to drive away from the store. While passing near a passing car, she noticed several men sitting in the auto. Those same men were approaching Lu Lei's store. One of the men sitting in the car dreamed that Lu Lei's name would be wiped off the face of the earth today. The bold men were approaching the supermarket in a threatening manner. One of them started shouting at Lu Lei to come out and hand over something. Lei gradually began to walk out of the supermarket, and replied to the impertinent men that it had just opened, let the boss come and get him. The guy had a lot of nerve, so he told the men to get the hell out of here. They had arrived with the goal of destroying the place, and they had no intention of leaving. But if he kneels down and calls out to his daddy, then they might change their minds and not destroy the place, and even give him some food. The undeterred kid defiantly gave the answer to his enemies that people usually say what they lack. And wondered if the boss wanted to be a daddy so badly because it wasn't working out for him to have a baby. The boss of the raiders did not tolerate this attitude, and ordered the men not to listen to nonsense, and to capture him. The men armed with bats began to rapidly approach Lei. Suddenly, a voice in the guy's head told him to use his eyes. When he looked at one of the attackers, he saw his full characteristics. His name was Su Chang, and according to the condition analysis the body was in a bad condition. To cure him one would need divine medicine. The attacker came close to Lei, but deftly dodged his blow. Once again, the voice in his head began to tell the guy that the user has great potential, he needs to actively expand the sales of the store. Meanwhile the guy thought that fighting and expanding the sales of the store is illogical, and it was extremely stupid in this situation. In a blink of an eye, Lei realized he had to act. And that's what he decided to start. Instantly he applied a back-breaking blow, the enemy promptly began to fall to the ground and screamed in pain. On the subsequent enemy he also used a deadly blow, the enemies cried out in pain. Also, in Lei's arsenal there was a punch that induced vertigo, with stunning success he also knocked out his opponent. The enemies didn't even think of retreating, but the guy wasn't going to give up either. Determined to act for sure, he applied a bone-breaking blow. Cheeky men didn't have the guts to beat him. After single blows, they would fall to the ground and could not resist further. The enemies felt devastated after fighting with Lu Lei. Even the boss of the bandits who attacked wanted to cry. Soon he cried, for he had never lost before. Lei began to feel sorry for the bandit, and wanted to help him and tell him what to do. Reaching out, he offered to take a potion to help him. This thing should help a devastated guy to reconnect with his girlfriend. It will make him a hot guy and will attract many girls to him, because this thing makes a man a sexy macho man. The bandit was incredibly happy, and asked Lei if the thing would work. The guy replied that he wasn't lying. As soon as he used it, there would be an immediate effect, only after there was an effect would he need to pay. Accepting the fact that payment was necessary, the bandit threatened that if it didn't work, Lei would regret everything. The kid even started to get nervous, but he didn't doubt the potion's effect. The bandits in fear began to run after their boss, for they were incredibly afraid of Lei. He in turn realized that other systems were somehow cultivating and he was selling some goods. A stranger approached the guy's supermarket again. With a surprised look, the hero immediately asked who the stranger was. There were several of them. One of them mumbled that he was pleased to see the youngest son of the family in such disarray. The insolent stranger was Meng Fuyan's fan, Long Lei, and a few other ambassadors behind him. Mockingly, the guy asked if Long Lei really thought he would go back to his aunt again. The insolent man thought Lei was pathetic. After all, Meng Fuyan was his fiancée, but he was blind and lost her. A memory hit the kid. He remembered how Meng Fuyan had turned him down. After all, she wasn't going to get married. With incredible passion, she wanted to find her love. At that point, the guy didn't even mind that she turned him down. The girl was incredibly badly shocked by this, for she wanted to offend by her unwillingness to marry. A day later, the kid told his father about the dissolution of the marriage, and he beat him up. Fuyan, it was incredibly unfortunate for Lei, because she didn't think that the divorce would get him beaten up. From that moment on, she was completely free. And now she could find her own love. The young girl was incredibly dumbfounded by Lei's words. She looked at him and almost sobbed. Lei was amused by the whole situation as he remembered the past, and Long Lei started to be nervous, for he had no idea why the guy was smiling. The insolent Long Lei was jubilant, for Lei was already done with her, and now she was only his girlfriend. The hero mockingly asked the cocky man if it was true. It pissed him off even more, as did the Ambo behind him. Long Lei didn't know what to answer him, and started grumbling like a girl to make him believe him. The kid couldn't take any more of these excuses from the insolent Long Lei, and immediately followed up by punching him right in the jaw. One single blow could disarm the defiant man. When Long Lei lost his honor and dignity, he ordered Lei's ass kicked so he knew who was boss. Instantly, the hero began to be surrounded by guards, ready to beat him to a pulp. Immediately there was a lightning-fast reaction from the guy, and he hit one of the guards with a low kick. Heroes realized that his bodyguards are not easy and he needs to take it seriously. Lei was not an easy warrior, and easily dealt powerful blows to the trained Ambalans. The mercenaries surrounded the guy gradually, but he beat them up one by one. Trained guards were losing to the common guy in combat with stunning success. Tricky Long Lei approached Lei from behind, and wanted to hit him with a glass bottle. Lei was struck with incredible force and the glass from the bottle shattered in all directions. The blow hit the hero right on the back of the head. As if nothing had happened, Lei turned to the wily criminal and said that using a weapon and attacking from the back was sneaky. Long Lei doesn't have to act fair to a dog like Lei, he said. The insolent man ordered the guy to stand up and all his guards to muzzle him. Suddenly, someone shouted out how dare they touch his brother Lei, and whether the attackers wanted to die. The one who shouted was Xue Chang. It was he who stood up to his so-called brother, and said that no one here would dare touch him. Lei awkwardly looked at Xue Chang and didn't understand how he had gotten here. It was quite clear that from the looks of it, that thing had worked. The insolent man asked Xue Chang if he was angry with Lu Lei, but the bandit said to mind his own business. The big guy didn't agree that he was angry at Lei's brother. If anyone laid a finger on him, it could be considered that they had touched Xue Chang in this way. Long Lei got even more nervous, because this was really bad. Xue Chang is dangerous. If he does something to him, then it will be very unfortunate. The insolent man cowardly shouted that since Xue Chang was here, they were even with him. Also, Coward didn't forget to remind about Meng Fuyan, and ordered the guy not to even think about her. The pathetic loser, along with his mercenaries, cowardly walked away. The big guy was incredibly happy to help his brother Lei, as he had gotten there just in time. Suddenly, the brother began to feel that something was happening to him. His eyes slowly began to close. When the guy found himself, there was an incredible girl in front of his eyes. She was taking Lei's temperature and trying to figure out what was wrong with him and heal him. The girl was incredibly shocked when she saw Lei awake. He wanted to know where the location was. The beauty replied that it was her brother's house. Despite her embarrassment, the girl replied that her brother had told her to take care of Leia. She was just going to treat his wounds, so he should have stayed still, because men make others worry about them. The girl carefully applied medicine and treated the boy's wounds. Lei was incredibly grateful to her, for he was glad that such a beautiful girl cared for him, after which he asked her name. The beauty's name was Han Xiao Xiao. Suddenly, Xue Chang walked into the room and cheerfully said that he had good news for brother Lei. The events continued at the nightclub. Su Chang brought his brother Lei, in order to show him off to his friends. Lei was incredibly nervous. Chang introduced him to his friends, and said he had given him the very remedy. A new friend was not so easy, and he launched an analyzing gaze, in order to figure out who his friends really were. It was like he was looking on the inside, and realizing what each of them were. Analyzed every new acquaintance. The guy realized they were all womanizers who wanted attention from girls. At this moment, he realized that Xue Chang was truly the type of person who got what he wanted. With awkwardness in his voice, he told them that he knew everything about them, since they were Xue Chang's friends. The new comrades did not believe that this guy was capable of such a thing. They had absolutely no idea that such a means existed. Xue Chang was indignant, for he didn't understand what was wrong with his friends and why they didn't believe him. Brother Lei patted Chang's shoulder because there was nothing wrong with that. After all, he simply won't sell them the remedy, even if they beg him. In the meantime, his beloved Chang entered, for she had brought him ginseng. Affectionately she asked him to open his mouth and say Aya. The womanizing friends were outraged. They didn't understand how Sister Fong could have fallen for Chang. They thought she was forced to do it. The girl suddenly averted her gaze from her supposed friends, and looked at them extremely angry. The guys felt embarrassed, for they didn't realize why the girl was looking at them like that. With fury, she tapped her foot on the table, and asked the defiant boys if they wanted to get punched in the face, if they wanted to go to the other side of the world. She could help them. Each of the newfound friends admitted they were wrong and apologized to Sister Fong. Sis Fong kissed her boyfriend affectionately, and wanted to break away, for she doesn't want to interrupt his party. The friends were clearly uncomfortable, for they couldn't understand how such a pretty girl could be dating Chang. No one could understand what had happened to Sister Fong. They thought she had taken some drugs, because she had never behaved like this before. Chang proudly hugged his brother, and replied to the doubting comrades that she had not taken anything, for he had just used one remedy. With this remedy he could get any girl. After that, everyone's doubts fell away, and everyone wanted to get their hands on this potion by purchasing it. Lei was ecstatic, for he wanted to become a millionaire through his supermarket. Each of the boys purchased a double dose of the drug from the young entrepreneur. The next day, the events continued to take place at the Liu family's supermarket. The supermarket owner was thinking about the fact that he sold all his merchandise last night. He needs to go to another world to restock. The kid asked the system to transfer him to another world, and the system started to do the transfer. As soon as he was transported to another world, he immediately heard an incredibly strange odor. The incredibly strong odor was making his eyes start to water. He was so dizzy that he had to cover his face so he wouldn't hear the incredibly horrible smell so much. The chubby kid turned to Lei, and introduced senior alchemist Wang Heng. He told him that Lei had a lot of high-quality medicine. As the old man got closer, the smell only intensified. When the hero activated the Eye of Rebellion, he realized that due to his uneven breathing while practicing the Shuo Qi cultivation method, his body had an unpleasant smell. The guy immediately saw fit to say, about his problem appearing after cultivation. Wang Heng was shocked by the immortal's insight, and asked how he knew this. Lei presented an innovative remedy. Thanks to it will be possible to get rid of this problem. This ointment should be applied daily to the affected area of the body. The old man was incredibly happy that he will no longer stink of slop, and recognized the guy immortal. The enterprising fellow was not going to give the old man the medicine for nothing, and asked him what he could offer in return. The guys prepared themselves. The old man had prepared a bone marrow purifying liquid with him. It helps novice cultivators purify and strengthen their bodies, and the fat guy had brought a box of potency pills with him. The protagonist had no small amount of chutzpah, and asked if that was it. His customers immediately became nervous, for they thought how there might not be enough of what they brought. For his part, Immortal said it was fine. The thing was that his ointment could only suppress the symptom and not fix the problem itself. If only he could learn a little more about the cultivation method, then maybe he could help some more. Lei would need to learn about their method itself, the medicinal herbs and spiritual stones he used during cultivation. Meanwhile, the guy was thinking that if he could improve some of his techniques, it would be easier for him to trade, and also, it would be good to learn about the cultivation methods of this world as soon as possible. The people from the other world were incredibly grateful to him, and considered the immortal's heart to be very generous. Suddenly, a peculiar feeling swept over the lad. Soon, he found himself back in the normal world. He was outraged that every time he completed an exchange he was thrown out of this world. The guy asked the system if there was anything he could do about it. The system gave a disappointing answer, for the reason why the master had been in this world for such a short time was because of the small level of the store. There was only level 1 at the moment. With the use of sarcasm, the guy replied that he should have time to do in those 10 minutes, maybe the system should give $5 to buy himself another hour. The system gave a disappointing answer, because in order to unlock even more features, the user needs to make transactions totaling 1 million yuan as soon as possible. Lei realized that he needed to become stronger and more influential as soon as possible to crush Wu Qing and take back his father's company. Meanwhile, an old acquaintance of his stopped by and made the observation that he was buying goods quite actively. The girl noticed the large amount of new merchandise in his store. And I concluded that Mr. Lin's business must have expanded a bit. Suddenly, the guy moved closer to the girl and pinned her against the wall. Holding out the potion to her, he replied that he did, then offered her a taste of the potion. The girl was clearly not a perfume and told him to put the thing back in the drawer and hide it somewhere far away. Lin Qiu's birthday was going to be today and she asked to keep Lei company and have fun properly. The supermarket owner realized that he didn't have the right clothes for the event, and there's really nothing funny about that. The caring lady expected the guy to say this and brought clothes with her. That suit looked brand new. It felt like she was trying to get him, and if she was, he couldn't afford to hurt her. It was rare to see such attentiveness on Ms. Meng's part. Lei now had everything he needed. And he happily thanked Miss. The girl became incredibly embarrassed, as she had never done something like this for anyone before. The events continued at Lin Qiu's birthday party at the Fengdu Hotel. Lei and Ms. Meng looked amazing. One of the party guests wondered why this place had become so glorious, and as it turned out Ms. Meng came here. Lei immediately saw his old acquaintance Lan Xiao, and asked him what he was doing here. The cheeky guy replied that since Lu Lei could come here, he was allowed to enter. The insolent man turned suddenly, and asked excitedly if the godfather was here. He was indeed behind, and suggested to go inside without doing anything stupid. It was the president of Tingfei Real Estate Group, Luan Sai-chang. The event was incredibly beautiful and there was live music playing. Meng together with Lei looked like husband and wife. Shui Chang noticed his little brother and called out to him from afar. The courageous kid noticed that his brother had called out to him and he should go over to say hello. All the guests at the table were incredibly happy to see Lei. Even Shui Chang's sister invited her brother to sit at the table. Cuddling tightly, her sister praised Lei's fighting prowess, for she had heard about it from her brother's stories. Ms. Meng became incredibly angry and jealous. Indignantly, she asked what the name of such a beautiful girl was. Sis replied that her name was Han Xiao Xiao. Leia's companion was ready to finish off her rival on the spot. With her breasts, Xiao Xiao pressed even tighter against Lei, and wondered why the girl was outraged. Miss couldn't stand such insolence, and politely asked to get off his arm. The cheeky girl didn't want to be separated from Lei, and asked his date if he was her boyfriend. Meng replied that no, he was her guest of honor, so he would sit at the same table as her. Guy walked up to Meng, and with a smile let her know that he was on the other side of the barricades today. Therefore, she needs to wait for the time when he can earn a place beside her through his own efforts. After this sentence the girl became even more jealous. Lei laughed, and offered to escort the miss to her table. The girl was completely unwilling to accept help. And in frustration, I started to leave for my table by myself. Long Xiao didn't miss the opportunity. After all, if Lei didn't plan to keep this beautiful lady company, then Xiao could do so. The old buddy behind got indignant, and asked what he meant. Lei told him to forget about it, and stop yelling and let Sister Chiu save face. Xiao with a sneer, he asked, what kind of face could a mongrel like him even have, and could it be, he still dares to call Lin Chiua a sister? Suddenly, a girl with beautiful blue hair approached Brother Lei. It was noticeable how embarrassed the guy was. The girl instantly jumped into Lei's arms, and exclaimed excitedly that they hadn't seen each other for a very long time. Lei was thrilled to have such an unexpected encounter. It's only been a month since they last saw each other, and the girl has become even more beautiful. That girl was the lady of the Lin family, Lin Chuya. The former companion again noticed that Lei was socializing with a new girl. This was incredibly disappointing to her, for she had expected so much more. Xiao once again resented that Lu Lei was too arrogant. That's why he doesn't count with Luan Sanqian. Friends were delighted, if mockingly asking what about Master Luan Sanqian, is he afraid to do anything? Well, suddenly, they discovered something they clearly didn't expect. Behind the defiant Xiao, a silhouette of a man of incredible size appeared. It was the same godfather. In his time, Master Luan Sanqian was known for his bravery in overkill, but that was no problem for Lei. Suddenly, another stranger came up and said it wasn't a big problem. The stranger was the very son of Wu Quan, the current heir of Sheng Lei Group, Lu Shiyu. An indignant Lei questioned what Lu Shiyu was doing here. The blonde replied that today was the day of his engagement, so of course he would be here. The hero was seized with a stupor, for he had not expected to hear this. He was extremely curious as to who the engagement would be with. Lu Shiyu smiled, and said that the engagement would of course be with the sweetest and most beautiful Ms. Ling Qiu. The girl clearly couldn't have expected this, and was shocked at what was happening. The young lady started yelling at the whole building, for she had not even heard of it. The blonde gloated, and with an incredibly evil smirk he considered the fact that her father had told her of her impending engagement. Laughing evilly, he also added that this celebration of her birthday is also a celebration of engagement. Her father wanted to unite their families through marriage. Lei stood up for the girl. After all, Chuya's sister didn't want this, so he better not go near her. Anger overpowered the groom-to-be. After all, this was a matter between the Sheng Lei group and the Lin family, so an outsider shouldn't interfere here. Lei realized that Shiyu was no competitor to him. Looking him straight in the eye, he said with insolence that he didn't have the strength to come any closer. Shiyu thought Lu Lei was ridiculous. After all, did he really think that no one in this hall could defeat him? Masters Luan Sanqian and Luan Xiao were still here. Xiao was also dead set against Lei, and wanted to join the guys in finishing off the young abandoned master. Big guy Xue Chang was angry that he had been spoiled by the celebration and ordered his opponents to come here, for he was not afraid of any of them. Lei's friend was no small size, and ordered Xiao to hit him if he had the strength. Meanwhile, someone came into the room. Master Lin walked in and everyone exclaimed that he was in the building, for it was the chairman of Lin Pharmaceutical Company, Lin Yuanlei. The boy in his upset feelings began to complain to Uncle Lin that it was Lu Lei, that toad who wanted to eat swan meat, who was preventing him from talking to Lady Chiuya about their engagement. The elderly man told his daughter that her mother agreed to this, Xing groups and their family would like to twin. The girl was almost on her knees and crying, telling her father that she didn't want to marry him. She snuggled up to the main character, and said that she wanted to marry someone like Lu Lei. Everyone in the room was stunned by such a serious statement. Uncle Lin approached his daughter and started to instruct her, telling her that wedding is a serious matter and not some game, but the girl kept saying that she loves Brother Lei. The embarrassed girl kept saying that she had fallen in love with him from their first meeting. He used to be engaged, however now he was single. Miss continued to stare at it, an incredible hatred could be seen in her eyes. The elderly man was surprised, because how could Lu Lei be worthy of her in her current position, because Xing Lei no longer belonged to him, but the girl did not care at all, because she loved Brother Lei. The man took his daughter's hands in his and asked her to heed her father's words. After all, she is the heiress of Lin Pharmaceutical Corporation, therefore, if she marries Lu Lei in his current position, she will only hurt him. Especially, even if she loves him, it doesn't mean that he feels the same. Lei meanwhile pondered over his father's words, and realized that this was his way of trying to get him to admit that he doesn't love Chiuya. Chiuya looked at her little brother with innocent eyes, and expected him to answer. He smiled, looked her straight in the eyes and told her that he loved Chiuya too. Everyone staying at the event was stunned by what was happening. The old man was suddenly sickened by what he heard, and he clutched at his heart. He literally started falling to the floor. Lei picked up the old man and whispered something to him quietly. Taking him by the hand, he said he would escort his uncle to the room. Xiao was indignant, and asked him to stop immediately, for did he really think he could escape so easily? Suddenly, Miss Meng spoke up and asked everyone to shut up, because this was Chairman Lao Lin's event and he had gotten sick, so she wanted the people present not to cause more trouble. Since it was the love of his life speaking, Xiao decided that he should calm down in such a case. Xiu also calmed down. After all, he wanted to give Chairman Lin some rest, and solve all the problems a little later. 10 minutes later, the chairman along with Lei came out after resting. The old man was incredibly happy. With a smile on his face, he announces that today's engagement is off. When the old man became ill, Lei watched him, for he wanted to see how he could be helped. He activated his eye of rebellion and began to analyze. Lin Yuanlei was already 50 years old, and a detailed analysis indicated that he had weak qi, and the reason for this was still being determined. Lei finally realized the reason for the old man's ill health, and he had a way to cure the genetic disease, so the old man no longer needed to ask Lin Qiyu for help. It wasn't Lin Yuanlei's style to be so impatient about Qiyu's engagement. Lin Pharmaceutical Corporation had been developing in Fengdu for over 300 years, and there was no reason for it to team up with Shenglei Group. The only reason Uncle Lin could go for it was because of a hereditary disease. The Lin Pharmaceutical Corporation wouldn't be able to find a cure, and if this became known, she would be finished. The old man literally grabbed Lei by his jacket, and said that he had better not joke and find a way to cure him, because this was a very serious matter, otherwise he would not only sue him for slander, but also, tied him up and gave him to Lu Xiyu as an apology. Lei asked Uncle Lin to be calmer. This hereditary disease is actually caused by an innate weakness of qi, and the bone marrow purifying liquid is the best way to cure it that he only got from his grandfather. It not only restores qi but also strengthens the body. Lu Shiyu's skill only knows how to forge medicines, whereas Lei can provide him with the true healing pills of the Lu family. Remembering his grandfather, the chairman decided to trust him, and drank the medicine. Suddenly, the old man felt momentary relief. His internal organs were full of energy. After which, he decided to call off today's engagement. The daughter was incredibly thankful to her father, but he was against gratitude. After all, it was all thanks to Lei's brother. Blonde Xiuyu was indignant, and asked what Lin Yuanlei meant. The elderly man stared at him intently and apologized to Mr. Lu. However, he only has one daughter, and if she doesn't want to marry him, there is nothing he can do here. Arrogant Xiu began to manipulate, and told the old man not to forget that he had asked the Lu family for help. The old man was not stupid, and told the guy not to worry about it. The Lin family would be able to sort out their own problems. The guy could not understand how Lu Lei had embarrassed him, and asked him to wait. Xing Lei Group would not just leave it at that. Lei smilingly replied that Master Lu was now a public figure, therefore, he needed to better watch his words to match his image. Like a cowardly rat, Xiu started to leave. The chairman wished him a good day after him. The girl was incredibly happy. She threw herself into her boyfriend's arms again, and shouted that Lei's brother was the best. Meanwhile, Xiao didn't waste the opportunity and started hitting on Ms. Meng. He noticed that she was in a bad mood and offered to drink wine. The girl didn't want to tell him she was in a bad mood and said she was just emotional, but thanked Mr. Moon for letting her save face. They clinked glasses and began to drink together. After a while, Xiao ordered the driver to take the girl to his villa, for today he was sure to win her over with his manly charm. The perverted Xiao looked at the girl and licked himself, then told her that she probably thought he wouldn't dare to do anything to her at this party. The girl was incredibly horny, and called the guy a despicable bastard. She begged to let him out, but he told her not to worry, for he loved her with all his heart. But suddenly, the car came to an abrupt stop. The guy didn't realize what was wrong or how it happened. He yelled to the driver, "What's going on here?" Lu Lei appeared on their way, blocked their way with his car, and started to get out of the car. With incredible fury, he ordered Meng Fuyao to be released. The insolent man was not so easy, and he began to laugh, after which he said that he had been waiting for him to catch him in his trap. Behind Lei was a guy with a bat who started swinging to hit him stealthily. Blood spurted onto the floor after the unexpected blow. After the blow, Lei staggered back. Xiao ordered the mercenaries to break his arms and legs, for he wanted to let him see him rape Meng Fuyao. Lei looked Xiao straight in the eyes, and fiercely said that Meng Fuyao was not someone he, the bastard, had the right to touch. The mercenary jumped on the guy again to deliver a powerful blow to his head. Something happened that the enemy could not have expected. Fortunately, this marrow-cleansing fluid is beneficial to the muscles and bones of the average person, and his body is now on par with steel. After Lei stopped one of the mercenaries and broke his bat, Xiao ordered everyone else to attack the guy as well. But he was ready to beat absolutely everyone. With incredible ease, he defeated his enemies. And with a simple kick to the face, he could knock out absolutely every tooth. The enemies were absolutely ridiculous, and incomparable in strength to Lei. When Lu Lei had defeated all the enemies, he took the bat, and told Luan Xiao that he was next. Xiao cowardly took the girl, and began to cover himself with her, and ordered her not to come near him, for if he did, he would finish her off. The guy this made her even angrier, and he ordered Meng Fuyao to be released immediately. Suddenly, with a powerful blow to the head, he knocked him out with a single blow. And like a real hero, he called the police to have Xiao apprehended, for he was the kidnapper. The rescued girl was incredibly hot and stuffy, but she had to be patient for a while. After all, they were almost there. Lightning fast, the guy and the girl pulled up to the supermarket and he carried her inside in his arms. They were home, and Meng Fuyao could relax. The girl was incredibly grateful to her savior. Suddenly, a strange feeling swept over her. She woke up on the bed and was completely tied up. The girl began to scream furiously, for she didn't understand what Lu Lei could do to her while she was sleeping. Ms. Meng yesterday was so active, he was so scared, he had no choice. If he didn't tie her up, he simply couldn't stop her. At that moment, the girl was really hitting on him, and if just a little more, this day wouldn't have ended like this. Meng was extremely embarrassed about yesterday, and she clarified with the guy if he had done anything to her. The guy, as a conscientious citizen, replied that if he had taken advantage of the situation, he would be no different from Luan Xiao. After all, at the end of the day, she should be with the one she loves. The girl was still uncomfortable, and she didn't understand how he found her like this. When Lu Xiu left, he didn't notice her, and on top of that, Su Chai had told him how Luan Xiao had been grooming her, and he thought something was amiss, so he took Su Chan's car. Cuddled tightly in her arms, she realized that luckily he was here, the rest wasn't as important. Suddenly, the doors of the supermarket opened wide open, and Chiyu walked in with a smile, and started calling for her brother Leia. She discovered something that really took her aback. I mean, from the outside, it looked incredibly weird. The guy immediately wanted to explain himself to Chiyu, for it wasn't what she thought. From the shock she experienced, she gradually began to fall to the ground. It was incredibly hard for her to relive what she had seen, and she fell unconscious. The events continued to take place in the Lin family's private hospital. Lei was waiting in the hallway of the hospital, and he saw Uncle Lin coming, and immediately stood up. Fortunately, his daughter was fine. The man asked Miss Meng to step back for a while, for he needed to talk to Lu Lei. The girl slowly started to leave and said she would wait outside. The guy immediately continued to ask about Xiu, for he was worried about her. The chairman told him about the hereditary disease that manifested itself, and the first time is usually always like this. She drank the medicine that Lei gave. So far the disease is under control, but needs to be monitored. The lover boy realized that this medicine could only contain the disease. To cure it he would look for a normal medicine. His uncle sincerely believed him. Uncle Lin didn't want to talk about it yet, and asked how he felt about Chiyu. After all, yesterday he had said that he liked her. Had something changed? He clearly hadn't expected such a question, and was a little shocked. With incredible courage he said he wouldn't hide it, and now he couldn't figure out how he felt. And afterwards, asked his uncle to inform him when Chiyu woke up, at which point the man asked him if he loved Miss Meng. With certainty, the heroes answered that no. After all, the most important thing right now is to reclaim the Shenglei group. The chairman was comfortable with this thought. He patted the guy's shoulder, and asked him to protect Chiyu. After all, he was a real man. Chiyu is going to wake up anyway. And then, Lei needed to tell her something about what had happened. Meanwhile, events continued to unfold at the house of Godfather Moon Sanxiang. Xiao approached him and asked him to avenge him. Sanxiang promised to avenge him, but he too must realize his mistake. After all, his mistake was that he hadn't killed Lu Lei yet. Wise Godfather denied it. Firstly, the mistake was that it was easy to use, and he also underestimated the enemy. And secondly, Meng Fuyao can't love him and he tries to forcefully get her. Godfather sincerely despised Xiao, and thought he was shameless. As he approached Xiao, he began to voice the third reason. In parallel to this, as he approached closer and closer, Xiao felt incredibly afraid. Sanxian overhead looked at the guy, and said that he had dishonored him by calling him a useless piece of shit. The insolent lad was confused. He was incredibly afraid of the Godfather, and begged to be forgiven for the deeds he had done. The wise man will forgive the guy this time because he's been serving him for years. Also, he'll give him the store so he doesn't have to go to Fengdu. Sighing in relief, Xiao began to thank his master. After all, everything had happened because of bloody Lu Lei. Turning away from the guy, in a haughty tone, Godfather told him not to worry, because they wouldn't embarrass themselves next time. There was someone who could handle him. Meanwhile, events continued to unfold at the Lu family home. Shiyu tearfully complained to mommy that damned Lu Lei was overdoing it, and now Shenlei Group's reputation had suffered a blow. The woman nonchalantly responded to his indignation, and told him to establish good connections with organizations for him to train skills in this business, but he was a loser just like that. Shiyu started to make excuses, and thought that Lu Lei had a serious roof, so that's why everything happened like this. Wise mother said about Lu Lei that she didn't need to rub her hands on him herself. Confused, the boy asked what to do with him in that case. With a devilish grin, she mumbled that for a fee, there would always be someone to do everything for her. A short time later, a man in his estate was on the phone regarding a share for a certain deal. It was about 5% of the stock. The guy's name was Yuan Xingjie's dark son. He answered madam on the phone, and said that she was very generous. The guy's target was Lu Lei, and he had to finish him off nicely. To the mercenaries in the manor, he also ordered them to make good preparations, for a new mission was coming soon. At the same time, the protagonist was in the otherworldly store. The sage was explaining to him the way the bone fluid works. Its power source was internal arteries, therefore, it increases physical strength, not energy. The boy asked how to treat it in such a case. The wisest elder gave him his spiritual pearl, and said it could help. But he also added that immortal Lu Lei had given him a remedy that took away the smell of his sweat, but it didn't cure. The elder believed the immortal, but he sees that he doesn't know at all the composition and action of these things he sells. The guy was visibly starting to get nervous, for he really didn't know the composition of the drug he had given to the elder. In the end, he was not confused, and started shouting at them. How could they not believe him, because he had helped them? The fat kid immediately fell to his knees, and asked the immortal not to be angry. Lu Lei pointed his finger at him, and told Jin Debiao to get up, because he wanted to give him something. The hero realized that it looked like he was going to have to give them something to make them more talkative. And the guy provided them with mouthwash. You had to rinse your mouth with it 3 times a day on a regular basis. It would effectively remove the odor from your breath. Debiao Lightning took the advice and began to rinse his mouth. After gargling, there was an incredibly pleasant odor from his mouth, and the elder was shocked at the effect of the remedy. Lu Lei turned around, and pointed at the medicine he needed, then ordered Jing Debiao to give him that medicine in exchange for a 5-pack of rinse. The elderly man immediately jumped up, and also wanted to get something from the hero. The proud little fellow replied that he always gave twice as much to kind people as they gave to him, but since the man doubted him, that was why he would get nothing. Fatty Debiao carried the mission of the temple on his shoulders. He always hoped for a good result of his work. It was good that the temple had people like him. The old man, for the sake of the temple, begged Lu Lei to forgive him. Good-natured Lei waved his hand, and said okay. He is kind, so he will not be reckoned with. For Jing Debiao's sake he asks him, but only for the first and last time. The temple guards thanked him for his generosity. As a thank you, they provided him with spirit pearls, and also took other medicines, techniques, stones, and other useful things with them, because after all, they had offended Lei. The enterprising hero was not stupid, and also grabbed some deodorant for the old man that would help him solve a problem he had. He was excited to see how he would use the rewards he had received in the other world. Also, incredible joy swept over him, for he realized how good an exchange he had just made. In one exchange he got rich. If he sells this batch of goods he can raise the level of the store. One should only take the spiritual pill when one had one's own chi energy, and the guy was going to train it. Suddenly, his phone rang. From the phone came a familiar voice that summoned him. It was Xue Chan. They met in an open-roofed coffee shop on the lakeside. In broad daylight he wanted to pull off a big deal. It was incredibly daring. The shrewd Lu Lei noticed that Chang was unhappy about something. The big man replied that Xiao Qiao had fallen in love with a rich and tall handsome man. The men jointly resented and discussed Xiao Qiao's new boyfriend. His name was Yuan Xingjie. He is the brother of the electronics store owner Jia Yuan, only he does not do the right things at all, only knows how to offend weaklings. He changes girls once a month, and the guys wondered how Xiao Qiao fell in love with him. Meanwhile, Yuan Xingjie offered his hand and said that he wanted to take her into the sky with him. Xiao Qiao was subdued by the incredible romantic proposal. As soon as they left on the helicopter, the men were shocked. They didn't understand how he took her so easily, and Lei thought it was a kidnapping. Somehow, magically, they wanted to head after him and catch up with him. A short while later, events continued to unfold at Xue Chan's house. They arrived at his house to gather and find out where Xiao Qiao was. Suddenly, someone began to enter the room. A girl in love with a huge bouquet of flowers walked into the room, and marveled at how romantic Yuan Xingjie was. They flew to his personal palace, they had a candlelight dinner, and afterwards he gave her a huge bouquet of roses. The men looked at this, and were amazed at what they saw. Lei immediately asked her why she trusted him so much. After all, he was not related to her in any way. The girl in love replied that he was handsome, good, he could not deceive her. Literally at the same time, the evil Yuan Xingjie promised himself to isolate Lu Lei from society tomorrow. Although Lu Lei could fight well, but the cunning romantic had prepared something interesting for him. The next day, someone started smashing up Xue Chan's store. As soon as Chan walked in to see who was doing it, he saw world boxing champion Macron shouting that he was on a mission. Suddenly, an incredibly strong blow followed. Running errands, he thought that Chang was Lu Lei, and with all his might, he punched him straight in the stomach. Xiao Qiao was hysterical. She was incredibly worried about her brother. The world boxing champion immediately paid attention to the beautiful girl, and became like a pillar, and could not take his eyes off her. The whole situation was being watched by Yuan Xingjie. In the meantime, he stopped his car and shouted to Xiao Qiao and Su Chan that they had better run away from here. After saying that, he instantly started accelerating his car. The world boxing champion gave him an evil look, and said he had completed his boss's assignment. The unsuspecting Xue Chang was standing next to his sister, and if he knew what kind of freak did it, he would have buried him alive. The nimble Yuan Xingjie said that he knew roughly who did it. The cunning guy remembered that when Qiuye was having a wedding banquet, Lu Lei had embarrassed her a lot, and if Su Chan got closer to Lu Lei, she would take revenge on him as well. Su Chan should have publicly announced that he was breaking off his relationship with Lu Lei, or there would be a lot of problems. The big guy didn't want to be made out to be a coward over some trifle and responded aggressively to the request. Nahal asked Xiao Qiao to persuade him, or Lu Lei will bring him a lot of problems. The girl immediately went to work, because she was worried about her brother, and thought it would be better. Chan Tut turned to his sister and asked the question, if her store was broken, would she leave her friend, but if her house was broken, would she leave her family? Yuan Xingjie decided to add fuel to the fire, and shouted that today his store was broken by a boxer, and tomorrow he might come with a gun. Suddenly, it hit the big guy. He realized that Yuan Xingjie wasn't even there, and how would he know it was a boxer? The sister was also in incredible shock, for she thought she had found love. The liar gloated, and asked why the big guy was so smart, since he could have gotten out of here alive. Yuan Xingjie summoned the silent snake assassin Chan to help himself. It possessed incredibly sharp claws, and was like a monster. As soon as Xue Chang saw the danger, he instantly behind his back started sending his location to his best friend Lu Lei, for him to arrive and help. The lightning-fast silent killer snake began its attack on Chan. and struck with her huge claws right at him. 15 minutes later, Shui Chang was lying unconscious and he was all wounded. This was seen by Lu Lei. He was seized by an incredible rage. Guy with all his might wanted to help him, putting his hand to his earlier. He said he would think about how he could stop him bleeding. The big man suddenly took the boy's hand. With his last strength, he pleaded to save his sister. Lu Lei remained calm and holding his friend's wound, he said that he would definitely save his sister. He was filled with longing and hatred towards Yuan Xingjie. An incredible rage overcame him, and he wanted revenge. A while later, the hero was driving a car, and thinking about the fact that he was afraid that if he went to Yuan Xingjie now, it would not end well for him. He should draw out some qi energy from the spiritual pearls just in case. The bold Lu Lei arrived right at Yuan Xingjie Castle. After all, he had come for Qiao Qiao. At the same time, Yuan Xingjie and Qiao Qiao were in the villain's room. He welcomed the girl into his dark tower. The girl was uneasy, for the name was scary. The doors swung open and Lu Lei walked in. Suddenly, he saw something in front of him that he couldn't have expected. It was the Macron boxing champion. On every floor, Lu Lei had top-level fighters waiting to fight him. This boxing champion came from South Africa. They hired him for 4 million yuan. Once, he single-handedly defeated a gang of bandits. The champion delivers 10 punches per second, and can break a 5 centimeters thick concrete wall with each punch. Without waiting for the dialogue to end, Lu Lei launched a lightning strike at the champion, and knocked him out with a single blow. The villain was watching what was happening through CCTV cameras and monitors in which were installed in his room. Even if he made it past the first floor, a deadly challenge awaits him next. For on the second floor, waiting for him is the assassin who are famous all over the world, that silent snake assassin Chan. The killer was paid 7 million to show up here. The speed of Cha and silent snake killer couldn't even be captured by special cameras. And the assassin's claws were full of poison. Lu Lei meanwhile stood still, and activated the defense with Qi. And in literally one ridiculous swipe, the assassin broke her legendary claws. Guy slapped her lightly on the head with his hand, and disarmed her. Yuan Xingjie was excited for the next floor, and believed that he would definitely not defeat the next enemy. The girl was in expectation of her savior, and patiently watched all that was going on. The next opponent should be Iron Lucky. 100 million yuan has been spent on him. He is talented with weapons. Lu Lei without hesitation, Lu Lei poked his opponent with his small dirk, and the latter cried out in pain. The dirk was not easy, he had just picked it up, and it was poisonous. The enemy fell, and white foam came from his mouth. Yuan Xingjie hoped that he would surrender because his next opponent would be the Manhwa demon killer James, who had killed hundreds of people. The protagonist used qi magic on him, and literally with one magic attack, the opponent was already completely immobilized. And afterward, shattered into little pieces. All that's left of the legendary human demon killer man of the James Saw is wet garbage, dry garbage, and metal debris. Yuan Xingjie continued to hold out hope. After all, when he killed Lu Lei, he would get 5% of Shenlei Group's shares, and when he killed Shishir, he would get the position of the director of Jiayuan Electronic Company. Qiao Qiao already didn't even believe the villain, and with a haughty expression, she told him not to even dream. The villain approached her, and said that he was not dreaming, for this is reality, and she is the first witness in this new reality. The girl listened to his ramblings and told him to look back. This was the same protagonist who didn't even notice he had walked 4 floors. He was bored of going through these floors, for they were incredibly few, and he didn't even have time to enjoy them. Yuan Xingjie was stunned at what was happening, and couldn't even say anything. The hero and the villain crossed glances. Lu Lei ordered Qiao Qiao to be released. The villain didn't even think of giving up, he told Lu Lei not to think that he had won. After all, he is not a fool like Mr. Luan, and always prepares every plan he has perfectly. Lei sneeringly looked at him, because Mr. Yuan had already compared himself to Mr. Luan. It was an embarrassment to him. Suddenly, Yuan Xingjie started drinking the bone fluid elixir of strength. Instantly, he felt an incredible sensation he had never had before. Yuan Xingjie, considering himself beautiful, strong, perfect, he was incredibly pleased with himself. Lei immediately realized that this was not bone fluid. The guy immediately realized that he needed to attack while he was showing off. The villain immediately noticed that the guy was attacking him. After all, he moved slowly, just like his grandmother. With one powerful punch, the muscular Xingjie laid Lei on the ground. Meanwhile, it seems that Lu Lei was up to something, and it was for a reason. Lei didn't understand where this liquid came from, so he asked the villain where he got it. It was given to him by his familiar, the beautiful and lovely mistress. He is so foolish to refuse the Shenlei group, and unworthy of being strong. The hero wanted to end this fight and started to get up. After all, he had already learned what he needed. Yuan Xingjie didn't understand how he was able to stand up. The villain realized that the only way this fight would be over would be to kill Leia. With an incredibly powerful and lightning-fast punch, Lei hit the rogue right in the stomach, and he cried out in pain. He had no drac experience at all, so his huge muscles were useless. Yuan Xingjie did not give up, for he believed that he had the perfect plan. From his pocket he began to pull a gun. Aiming directly at the hero, he wanted to kill him. Lu Lei, a bit of panic gripped him, but he was focused enough. Xiao Qiao screamed, realizing that Lei was in danger. The rogue Xingjie fired a shot from his gun. He smiled, and pronounced that a gun would always help against a fighter. Incredibly, while Lu Lei continued to stand on his feet, after all, he was using qi magic. Grabbing the bullet with his hands, his gun could only scratch Lei slightly. He had so little faith in his muscles that he decided to take out his gun. The bone fluid really didn't help Yuan Xingjie. When the assassin realized he was in danger, he suggested that Lei's brother calmly discuss things. Lei was approaching, and said they could talk things over, but this powerful punch was dedicated to him for Xuechan. Lu Lei lifted Xiao Qiao in his arms, and told Mr. Yuan that he wasn't going to take revenge on him, and he had hoped that their conflict was over for now. The guy started to walk away, and asked him not to look for more trouble. The offended Yuan Xingjie began to call out to him, for he believed that it wasn't over yet. He was in incredible pain and begging to be saved. Suddenly, behind the villain, someone standing with gloves on covered his mouth, then told him that absolutely everyone would know about what happened here. A while later, Lei and Xiao arrived at Su Chan's room, which was in the Lin family's private hospital. The girls started to thank the hero. If it wasn't for him, they would have been in big trouble. Lei was good-natured. After all, Su Chan is his brother, he can't leave him in trouble. The guy smiled and asked the girl to just call him Brother Lei. He didn't need to be so ceremonious with him. Xiao Budto blossomed, and began to call the hero Brother Lei. A while later, Lu Lei arrived at the Lu family's store, and asked the system to transport him to the netherworld. In his hands were new gifts for immortals. An incredibly bright light shone around him. The system notified Lei that the store's revenue was 1 million yuan, so the store's level is upgraded to poor stall. The store's makeover was also obtained. The stay in the otherworld was increased to 20 minutes. The store can create aura chi, and the reward of a hard nut was obtained. The friends from the otherworld were incredibly happy to see him, and brought him a merchandise deal. Also, Elder Wang had prepared a gift for him as an apology. The guy was a lot smarter than they thought. He didn't need that kind of politeness. They should have put the goods down, for he wants to ask them something else, for he had seen one guy take a pill after which his muscles swelled up a lot. Elder Wang was greatly surprised, because only the shaking chi pill had this effect. although it had a temporary strength-boosting effect, but the side effect was very harmful to one's health. The old man immediately wanted to know where the immortal had seen the effects of this pill. Lei in parallel started asking questions about how rare this pill was. The elder became incredibly nervous, because his former disciple named Wang Lu had broken the rules of the temple and sold these pills to other disciples to dishonestly pass the certification. For this he was expelled. If he was forgiven for this, then all the disciples would be in danger. Lei immediately realized what the matter was. He guessed that Qing also had contact with the other world. Now he was afraid that he was in big trouble. Fatty, meanwhile, wanted to make one return pill transaction with the immortal, but he could only do it once at most. Lei was greatly surprised, and immediately asked if he could get more pills. The ingredient for making pills is available in Qinghan Mountain, but recently, dark energy has been activated there. Now there are many monsters roaming there. The guy wanted to find a way out of the situation, so he asked if they had any more pills, as well as the bone fluid, because it could also be exchanged. The elder replied, if they didn't go to the Qinghan Mountain, the alchemist would be left without ingredients. The hero immediately guessed that the immortals wanted him to help them, but he was extremely short on time. Elder Wang Bi had an idea. If the immortal could master the Gushan teleportation technique, then there was hope. Lei visibly began to feel nervous. After all, he didn't understand what it was. Suddenly, some girl appeared out of nowhere and heard that someone was looking for her. It was the princess of Gushan country, Hong Xiu. The immortals immediately bowed to the princess, and wished her good health. But she was extremely resentful of the chubby showing up in this new place and not even saying anything, causing her to have to find her own way around. Hong Xiu began to look around, for a potion shop. She picked up the first thing she saw, and began to examine it. Suddenly, the girl turned to Lei and said that his place was so bad. The guy was indignant and responded by calling her a girl and said that everything was fine here. The princess also took umbrage at the guy calling her a girl. Suddenly, he began to rise above the ground, not realizing what was happening. The girl was still just as outraged, and shouted that she was the very real princess. She begged the guy to stand and not run away, but he couldn't stop. After teleporting, he found himself back in his supermarket. This Hong Xiu immediately seemed like a spoiled brat. He didn't understand how he should conduct transactions now. As the level of the store rises, it no longer needs the system. If the owner fails to raise the store to the third level in a month, with a turnover of 10 million yuan, the system will confiscate all the bonuses. The guy literally started screaming, because it was completely unfair. This system was cheating. A while later, Lu Lei was thinking about how he could earn 10 million in a month, as it could only be done by selling the return elixir at this moment. The spiritual pill has finally been energized. The boy was ready to put it to good use, for he could use a visit to Lin's family. The hero came to Lin Qiuya's chamber. In a few days Qiuya must absorb all the energy from the spiritual pill, then she will wake up. Also, he had a request for Uncle Lin. He wanted to ask him something. In the restroom, he showed him the elixir of return that the Lu family produced. It has one unusual effect. Uncle was wary, for he did not understand what this potion could do. 30 seconds later, he felt the same effect. This elixir is the best among the others on the market. He asked his uncle if he could increase his sales with it during this month. Lin immediately informed him that in order to register the drug, it has to be registered, which is a long time. Then he asked if there is a prescription for this drug. The boy began to worry, and justified that it was a secret recipe of his family. His uncle did not dare to help him, because he was not sure of the composition of the drug. Lei made the suggestion that maybe he could slip his elixir into the healthcare products department. It required Mr. Chi's consent, and Uncle didn't have any ties to him. Uncle warned that it was better not to pester him with his problems. Lei immediately realized that the idea was useless. The hero had to go, and asked if it was necessary to leave the elixir, but his uncle refused, for he still had patients to treat. When Lei returned to the supermarket, he realized that things weren't going that smoothly. He needed to replenish the goods. If he didn't meet the income target, the system would deprive him of many bonuses, and then he wouldn't be able to take revenge on Wu Qin. The guy took some sort of box with him just in case, and asked the system to move him to a parallel world. Instantly he was met by the princess, and began to shout that he was still a daredevil, for last time he had dared to run away and not listen to her. The immortal Puffball also succumbed to the princess's influence, and was beaten, but he began to justify Leia by saying that he was very busy, and had little time. The guy immediately realized that it looked like Jean Debiao was badly hurt. To calm her down, Princess still was just as indignant, and started yelling at Debiao that she didn't allow him to speak. The girl was incredibly cranky and it seems she needs to be dealt with harshly. The guy yelled at her that since she came to him for a deal, she needed to behave according to his rules. The cheeky princess started using fire magic, and asked if this barn could have rules, since she could burn it down right now. The spoiled girl also said that she could trash the place and she would get nothing for it. She started crashing all the potion shelves in the store, Lei visibly starting to get nervous. He realized that now she was going to have to be taught a lesson. Suddenly, the girl was going to attack him, and wanted to use her power. She said with a sneer, how a wimp like him was going to teach her a lesson. And she used magic right on him. The princess lifted the guy straight up into the sky, and made him levitate. Lei began to yearn, for he realized that this girl was no ordinary girl, her power was many times greater. But he also remembered that the system provided him with a bonus called Die Hard. He ordered the system to run Die Hard, for he wanted to show her his true power. The system clarified if he was sure he wanted to run the disposable Die Hard ability. There was vapor running down the guy's face. He could have been killed and the system was asking him such improper questions. After that, the launch of Die Hard began. The princess had the audacity to say that Lei wasn't an immortal, but just a trickster. The guy was even more angry about it, because she dared to attack his store and he wanted to punish her. Heroes activated his Die Hard ability and an incredible dragon appeared around him. The immortal Chubby bowed, and asked Lei not to be angry. The princess just has that kind of temper, and she didn't want to hurt him. In a rage, the guy started yelling that if she didn't mean any harm, in that case she wouldn't have ruined his store. Lei should hang her from the front of the store for 3 days as punishment. The princess frantically began to cry, and invoke pity to be spared. To see if intimidation would work, the guy decided to activate the Eye of Consent to see if she was pretending to be poor. According to the eye analysis, due to her parents being busy with government affairs and not paying attention to her, she attracts him to her in these ways. The hero wondered, because he thought she was being spoiled, but it turns out her parents were just spoiling her. He turned to her. He knew she needed more attention from her parents, but he wasn't going to indulge her whims. If she got older and started helping her parents she would have more opportunities to spend time with them. The princess was incredibly surprised. She hadn't told anyone about this. Lei was glad he had shown her weakness, and understood her behavior. The little girl didn't understand at all how she could possibly grow up. Originally needing to start with mutual respect, Hong Xiu obediently put the shelves in order within 10 minutes. And afterward, she changed in front of the immortal and said she wouldn't do it again. Since the girl had come to her senses, Lei decided to give her a gift. It was a mirror with ears like a kitten. She was incredibly excited about this gift. The time of the deal was up, and the protagonist said goodbye to the inhabitants of the other world. Wang Hen didn't come this time, so the deal was one batch of return pills. Suddenly, the guy got a message. It was Yao Yao asking him if he was busy. Some time later, they met at a coffee shop, and he was telling Ms. Main that he was always free for her. The girl was as serious as possible, and would not take his jokes. for she said it was not the time for them. Yuan Xingjie is missing. The girl heard that Lei was searching earlier, and she believes that he is not a killer, but something is not right here, so he should be more careful. The boy thanked her concern, and said he would never forget her kindness. The missus stirred her coffee valiantly, and asked him to be more serious. The guy's phone rang again. It was Lu Xiyu, and he was asking why Lei wasn't at the store. After all, he ruined Lu Xiyu's wedding, so he wants to repay the favor, and they advise him to hurry back to the store or it will burn down. Leia's suddenly panic gripped him. He didn't know what he should do in this situation. The guy didn't understand how an impudent person dared to set the Lu family's inheritance on fire. He would never forgive him for this.